So let's start with today's webinar. So you're already aware that we'll be starting off with the Financial Reporting December 2025 InFocus webinar that is about the quick wins and the study strategies. So let's move forward. So the agenda that we have today with us is the first part of the agenda relates to the exam techniques. So in this part of the agenda, I would not only be having and conducting a generic discussion, but this would also be entailing going us into practical exam examples from the past papers. And I would be teaching you how to go about them. The next part is about the smart strategies. And in these smart strategies, I would teach you how to secure the easy marks, how to scoop up the marks which are available around over there for harvesting before moving towards the harder part of the exams, which normally and quite surprisingly students miss when they are under the exam pressure. And the third one is very tricky, where most of the students get a lot of issues while how to control their time during the exam. So this is the part where I'd be coming up with a very simple yet a very powerful strategy in order for you to know how to go about and control your time during the exam. And at the end of the session, I'd be coming towards a high impact 2-week plan for exam revision. And finally, the live Q&A session would be there. Put in as many questions that you'd want to wish to put in. And by the end of the session, I'd try to answer as many of them. Tips and tricks. So this happens to be a very tricky area because quite often students go around asking for tips. They get those tricks on social media. But one important, very crucial impact about the tips and tricks is that no matter how good the tips and tricks that you're being able to secure, they are not an alternative for the knowledge part and the applied skill gaps if you have them. So if you have not learned how to apply your knowledge, or if you have not consumed enough knowledge by your tuition notes, your study texts, going back to the explainer videos, these tips and tricks will effectively not work. I also want to come up with a very important point and discuss it with you people is the confidence. So confidence is the sole important thing that is around for any student to secure success in their exam marks. Confidence is then derived from a function of a formula. Let's see how does that work. So here's the formula that I was talking about. I call it the top to down approach. The step one is to consume knowledge. And this consumption of knowledge would essentially be coming from your study texts, from the tuition notes, from the lectures that you might be attending online or in person, and the study hub, obviously. Now, once that you've consumed the knowledge, the next part is actually attempting quizzes to test yourself if your knowledge that you have been able to secure is right or not. And thirdly, the next part is about practicing those questions. So this is the part where you hone your skills, you manage your time, and you put yourself to test and see whether you are being able to pass the practice questions or not. And by the end of the day, then there's another crucial part that is about the past exam questions. Now, these past exam questions are there to master the exam strategy, actually. And one very important aspect that sits on top of them, especially which is valid for not only financial reporting exams, but all the other exams that are related and come up at this applied skills level. And that is application is the key to passing. Without applying the concepts that you've learned over a period of time, there's the slightest chance for you to pass these exams, because examiners would come up with such questions which would literally be testing the application. And yes, obviously the knowledge part is going to be there, but it is going to be a minimal one. Okay, so there's a specific part of our audience that I want to talk to you about this part. And I can really understand how frustrating it is when you fail in this 45 to 49 bracket. And this frustration is something that keeps on lingering around for another 3 months until and unless you attempt another exam. Now that a lot of audience is around here with me, I would like to ask you people this very pertinent question. Have any one of you have failed in this bracket, 45 to 49? And while you people are typing in, please also tell me how does it feel to pass, feel to fail over here in this bracket. So I can understand this is very frustrating and devastating. Oh, 45 marks, 49. My God, just 1 mark. So I can really see the plight over here. Failing on 49 marks means that just 1 mark stood between you and that success line. 1 more mark and you could have been pushed towards the other side and you would have been successful. And you wouldn't have then spent another 3 months doubting yourself. So if you're part of this audience and you've failed in the bracket of 45 to 49, you've come to the right place. I have got some very amazing strategies coming up, which will really give you that ability to cross this line. So let's jump right into the exam strategies. And the first one that we're going to look into are the MCQs and the OTQs part. And there is something which might be pretty obvious to you people already, but I really wanted to make it a point over here and emphasize that section A has 15 MCQ marks and it accounts for 30% of the total marks of your exam. And then section B has another 15 marks, which accounts for another 30% marks. In total, this is a whooping 60% mark, which is coming straight from the MCQ type questions. And OTQ questions are also a format, a bit changed of the MCQ type. The only difference is that there's certain information that you would need to be drawing on to in order to, really answer those MCQ type questions. So this is an area that you cannot miss. So here's the strategy for it. And I tell you, this is an amazing strategy. So in the first 25 minutes, you have to blitz the easy one. Literally target the easy questions. Now, there are certain questions which are easy. Then there are certain questions which are mediocre questions, and then there are the hard ones. What you have got to concentrate upon is that you need to just go through every single question in a sequence and try to hit the question that you can probably do in less than 60 seconds. Let me take you through a question which is coming from September-December 2024 attempt. Now in this question, let's read the requirement first. What amount should be charged to the statement of profit and loss for the year ended 31st December X3 in respect of the development cost? Now, I have on purpose read the requirement first. This is basically wired into me as to what I need to look for. And then let's go back to the scenario which says that tenant company has capitalized development cost of 6 million relating to Project Atlantic in its statement of financial position as of 31st December X2. The company began selling the product in X3 and has reliably estimated the following expected unit sales. Now we can see that in X3, there were 144,000 units, X4, 120,000 units, and X5, 96,000 units. And in total, they make a total of 360,000 units. The development costs are capitalized, they need to be amortized back to the profit and loss account, and we clearly get to see that there are 3 years. Here is the answer, folks. 6 million divided by 360,000 multiplied by 144,000. That gives us an answer of 2.4 million. And we can clearly see that we have marked this question in less than 60 seconds. Now, the very capacity of being able to pull away with these questions under 60 seconds means that you would now have time for other questions. And this time would essentially be cross-subsidizing the other questions. Moving forward, and in the same bracket of 0 to 25 minutes, here is the next strategy. There are going to be some questions which would be hard nuts. They would be giving you tough time. What you people need to do is use this amazing option of flagging the hard questions and move on. There is a question from September-December 2024 attempt. And if we just peruse through the question, we get to see that M acquired 90% of B, 3 million was the share capital, Acquisition was done back in March 2024. Goodwill was 10.2 million. NCI was on fair value. And on 1 June, that is around after 2 years probably, uh, the company was sold and it was a full disposal. And on 1st of June 2006, retained earnings were at 29.7 million and non-controlling interest was at 8.4 million. The point that I want to emphasize over here is that there are more than half a dozen points that the question is shooting straight at you. And if at any point you go blank on them, you need not to panic. Here's the strategy for that. Just flag it for review and move forward. There's no use over pondering over a question that you ultimately won't be able to crack. This would only come at the expense of the easier marks that may come along in the other parts of the question as you move along with your exam. Okay, finally, now within the bracket of 26 to 51 minutes, which would approximately be 21 minutes again, you need to return back to the flagged ones and now attempt to go ahead with these questions. And there are a couple of techniques which I would advise for you to attempt them. Use the elimination method, use the back solving method, and use the structured working method. Now, what do I mean by the elimination method is that there are going to be certain options within the answers which would literally make no sense to you. They'd be quite off. Either the numbers are going to be humongously big or the number would be a small one, which would not be making any sense to you. You can eliminate those options from your answer. Back solving, once again, happens to be one of the areas that can really push you towards a mark. For example, there's a question about a revaluation surplus. You have 4 options. Pick up one option and try to back solve it and try to match whether it fits in with the carrying value and the fair value amount or not. So this could also come in handy. At 3, we have structured workings. Basically, structured workings are the formats that you need to use, plunge in the numbers and get the answer out. This question that we have in front of us is a perfect example. So in the final 2 to 3 minutes, this is a very crucial time. What you guys need to do, that if you're really, really stuck with an MCQ question and you're not being able to get away with it, you need not to take any risk at all. Because there is no negative marking in ACCA. And out of 4 options, 1 option is correct. You stand 25% chance of getting the right answer. So don't blink an eye, make an educated guess, select the right option that fits right to you and move forward. By the way, what I think about this question is that option B, 12 million, happens to be my guess over here. So I would really like to hear from you out in the chat if I have opted for the right option. Next, we have section B, OTQs. The problem that I get to see here with my students is that they go back to the scenario over and over again and try to read the scenario like 5 times in a row, just in order to familiarize themselves with what is coming up in the scenario. So the goal is not to read the scenario 5 times, but only once. And how would we do it? Step 1 is to skim read the questions first. So here I have taken up a question from March 2024 attempt. These are the 5 questions. Let's see what are the highlighting points over here. So the question number 1 is talking about which of the following statements regarding how transactions in B should be dealt within D's company financial statements are correct. Sales and purchases should be translated into dollars at the closing rate. That means the question is talking about IS 21 about the exchange rates. Question number 2 is talking about IFRS 9 financial statements. Question number 4 is what amount should be recognized as finance cost in respect of the redeemable preference shares. And finally, question number 5 is talking about financial liabilities. So what will happen is that once you go through the requirements, these requirements would then automatically wire into your mind. And you would be amazed that while you are reading the scenario, how the pertinent and relevant figures would now start jumping back to you. Okay, let's move forward. The second step is to carefully read and annotate the scenario. Here's the question, and this is how I have annotated it. As you can see that I've used different colors of highlighters over here. In order to highlight the information that was pertinent and relevant about IS-21, I've used the yellow color. For the 4% convertible loan notes, I've used the green color. And for the 7% redeemable preference shares, I have used the blue color. So this categorization is primarily providing me with a dissection within my own mind where I have collaborated to pinpoint the relevant information within the scenario. And now comes the most important point, which most of the students miss. And probably they are averse of using the scratch pad over there. This is an amazing option in the exam hall to use your scratch pad to create a quick fact sheet. What students ordinarily do is either they try to put up things in their own head, or they try to grab a pen and paper and write down the things in order to pull back that information later into the question. My strategy over here is to use the scratch pad instead of the pen and paper. Let's see how I've done it. So what I've done over here, using the same example that I've used just a while ago, I have comprehensively and very concisely put in the information in the scratch pad. I have made up a fact sheet. So company year end is 30th November XX. New territory, functional representation currency is dollar. Financial instrument number 1, which is a 4% convertible loan, was issued at nominal value. Transaction cost was 0. Date of issue was X, 1st of December X5, that is 12 months before the year end. Loan notes without conversion rights had an interest rate of 9%. Redemption was on 30th November X8, which is actually after 3 years of the issue. And discount rate for all 3 years is 0.9 and so on. So what I've primarily done here is that I've used the scratch pad and put in the relevant information. Purpose over here is that I do not categorically need to go back to the scenario again, because that is now going to be confusing and perplexing. So let's see how I have made use of this information. So here's the question from March, June 2024. The first thing that you guys need to do is to read the question at least twice, not once, twice, and then mind the details within the question. Once done, you would then move forward to use the fact sheet, not the scenario. I'm coming again. Use the fact sheet to solve the objective type questions. So let's see and mind the question. What is the initial measurement? Initial measurement, not the subsequent measurement, of the equity element for the convertible loan. Equity element, and not the financial liability part. And you have to provide your answer in dollars and millions, and which would be correct to 2 decimal places. You have 4 options over here. Let's see how the correct answer is calculated. So this answer is calculated in 3 parts. You'd be calculating the interest rate first, then the liability part, and finally the equity part. What I really want to emphasize over here is that if you see the answer you've come up with is 0.697 million, which is not one of the options within the scenario. You'd only reach the right answer, which is C, if you round off your answer correct to 2 decimal places. So this is how important it is to read the requirement at least twice so that you get the answer right. We would now be moving forward to section C, which is the interpretation and the analysis part. So this is the part where you need to de-seat yourself from being an accountant and then become a business advisor. The strategy out over here is to read the requirement first, because reading the requirement will primarily wire your mind neurologically in order to pick up the relevant information from the scenario itself. The second thing to do is to carefully read and annotate the scenario itself. Aggressively annotate it. Look out for the important dates, important numbers, if there's unrealized amounts or anything that grabs attention. But now the information that you would be aggressively highlighting, annotating would be the one which would essentially be relevant to the requirements. And finally, at level 3, create a fact map. Now, this is something that I really need to explain to you people. What do I mean by the fact map? In an interpretation and analysis question, you have financial information as well as non-financial information. So this non-financial information are factual statements. You being a business advisor really needs to look behind the factual statements. For example, the question says that the organization happens to be the largest supermarket. What should go on in your mind right now is that being the largest organization in the supermarket means that this organization has access to economies of scale, and this organization would be in control of the market. So this is the kind of information that you need to relate a fact map about. Oh my God, know your key ratios cold. This is a very important aspect. Lately, the pattern that I've seen with the examiner is that the examiner is obsessed about the return on capital employed ratios. So if you're not aware of the calculation of ROCE, which is operating profit divided by total assets minus current liabilities, you would not be able to score marks over here. And every single calculation has half a mark.
Hi,
and you need to be very
Aslan, I'm very sorry to interrupt. We're going to turn off your camera because they just to try and resolve some lagging issues. So I just wanted to let you know. So we'll do that. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. I'll let you get back to the presentation. Sorry for interrupting.
So I've just put it off. No issue, Isabel. So let's keep on going. So be alert to question specified formula. For example, in March 2025, the examiner himself specified that the formula that you need to use is gearing equals to debt over equity. Now, there were certain people who got adamant and that instead of using a formula which was specified by the examiner himself, they wanted and they actually used a formula which was debt over debt divided debt plus equity. Now, you need to be really careful where the examiner is asking you and specifying a formula. Go by the examiner, go by the flow of the question. So the examiner says that majority performs badly on the analysis part. And let me tell you why. The reason behind it, that the majority of the students are actually trying to explain and state as what is happening in a scenario, which is actually coming back with 0 marks. The examiner here is actually looking for the why behind the what. If you would put up a statement which is a factual statement, 0 marks. The examiner wants you to link the information back to the scenario and come back with the proper reason as to why a certain thing is happening, why a ratio is moving in a certain trajectory, or why is there a specific pattern around it. And finally, provide a conclusion at the end, because conclusion paragraph has a separate mark. Here is the question from March-June 2025 attempt. Part C, as you can see, has 12 marks and it is asking to analyze the financial performance and position of L company for the year ended 31st March 2005. So here is how I would teach you how to put the technique into action. So the gross profit margin that the students calculated was 16.1%. Sector average was 13%. And the relevant information which was available in the scenario was that Longate Company is the largest supermarket chain in the country. Here is a sample answer. A student came up with an answer that L's gross margins of 16.1% is greater than that of sector average of 13%, which is very positive sign. Now, what the student has done over here is simply stated the fact. 0 marks. Another student has gone a notch up. And on top of explaining what has happened to the percentage, the student has also contributed in a manner that this informs the fact that it is performing better than its competitors. It is generally the case where cost of sale is lower than the competitors due to any reason. 0 marks. Why? Because the answer is generic. Examiner is basically looking for a reason and a connection to the scenario. Here's the third answer. Long End Company has a gross profit margin that outperforms the sector averages by 4%. As Long End Company is the largest supermarket in the country, it may well benefit from economies of scale, which other companies in the industry do not have. Now you can clearly see that this student has actually linked the information which was non-financial information and made it a reason and made it a point to feed it to the examiner to secure marks. 1 mark for this. Okay guys, now let's move forward to section C. Another important area which is about providing the conclusion. If you would provide a conclusion paragraph which is separately headed, you are going to get 1 separate mark. This is where most of the students don't put themselves in, and they don't provide a separate conclusion paragraph. It really doesn't matter if your conclusion is right or wrong, if it matches the examiner's answer sheet or not. What should be there is that your conclusion should be in line and in synchronization with the calculations that you've performed in the scenario. Now let's go to the section C, which is the numerical part. So here is the strategy for it. The first thing to do is to set up the performer. Performer somehow happens to be the most amazing part of it, because once you have the performer in line, you would only have to just put in the figures and move through it. Remember, questions which are numerical, especially the consolidated questions, they are a marathon. They are not a sprint. And you need to practice how to pull up the formats, how to put in the labeled working headings, and then how to populate the performer workings within them. Now, once the performer is there, you put in the workings. The next part is that you need to go in sequence and work through the adjustments. And while you're working through the adjustments, really don't worry if you're getting it right or wrong. Even if you get stuck, just assume the figure and move forward. You need to capitalize onto the own figure marks and need not to stay over there. You need to clearly link the workings to the answer. And here's another tip. Use a separate column to reference the working. What other people do, what most of the students do, that they just put in the reference, or either they don't put in the reference for the workings at all, and the examiner keeps on wondering as to where the working has popped up from. You need to use a separate column to reference the workings. Don't write the formula separately. Do not write the formula separately. So there would be a situation which I would practically be showing out to you, where you need to add a couple of numbers, you need to perform subtraction, multiplication, or whatever for that sake. This is the kind of a thing where you do not need to put a separate working, just put in the formula within the cell, examiner would be able to see it. An important thing is to look out for apportionments. For example, if you're attempting a question about consolidated income statements, you need to be careful about the apportionments. If the subsidiary was acquired within the year, say 6 months down the line, you only need to consolidate the 6 months part, not the full year. Here's a question from March-June 2025 attempt, which is asking for a consolidated statement of profit and loss account. And this is what I want to show you. On my left-hand side, I have shown all the workings that are related to the question. And on the right side, from row number 28 up till row number 39, these are the workings. Now just see how clearly I've marked the workings and cross-referenced them with the separate reference column that I've inserted. And look at this 10,000 amount and see in the formula bar that the formula is already given. For such small trivial workings, I need not to provide a separate working. So you need not to waste your time going around the workings and putting them into the Excel, which a formula can do away with. We have now come to the smart strategies part. I'm really excited about it because this is an area where students really struggle. So if you've encountered a hard nut, a really difficult question, that you're not being able to crack, then my strategy would be to assume and move on. There is no use getting stuck on it and wasting your precious times and marks, where you can move forward and then grab and scoop some easy marks down the way. And remember, the own figure rule applies. Even if you're stuck and you assume a figure to move forward, the examiner is still going to give you marks for the ensuing and the entailing workings. So learn to sacrifice one hard mark in order to gain much more marks in questions to come. Okay, the questions that are involving ratios and formulas, they're a very easy target. Go for them, blitz them. Don't mess around these questions. Learn the formulas, learn the ratios, they're the easy marks. Finally, hunt for standalone knowledge questions. And I'm telling you, there are going to be certain questions in an examination which would not be related to the formula, to the scenario at all. They would be standalone questions. Either they'd ask you to explain or to describe. Keep an eye open for them, and if you are being able to hunt a question, go for it. Let me show you how you have to go about it. So here's a question from our June attempt of 2025, which says, explain the principles behind the accounting treatment of hard company and summarize for hard horse company, specifically how this would be recognized in the S group statement of financial position as at 31st December X8. Now, what I want to tell you about this scenario is that the scenario and the consolidation was about a consolidated statement of financial performance. But this question is about financial statement. And it is asking you to explain principle behind accounting treatment of H. Now, H happens to be an associate of the group. If you could only go there and tell and explain what significant influence is and what is an equity accounting, just 2 single lines around it, and you would be able to win 2 marks. And these 2 marks are really not associated with the scenario at all. If you're really not aware how to calculate as to how equity treatment would go into the statement of financial position, don't bother about it. Just grab these easy marks and move forward. Okay, this is an area which is a daunting one, and most of the students really struggle to stay in control of their time. I have the strategies which will really make the life easy for you. The first strategy is to attempt the exam question in the sequence they are presented. Now, many of the students, they have heard a lot of things from their seniors and on the social media. What they try to do is that they try to go to the parts which, according to them, are the easier parts. But let me honestly tell you, this is not what happens with financial reporting. Because financial reporting happens to be an area which is already laid in a pattern where there are easy marks at the start and difficult marks at the end. So follow the flow of the question paper. Don't try to reinvent. Remember, what are the timings? You need to ring fence yourself around section A, B, and C. You really need not to micromanage the subparts, but ring fencing the overall sections would do. Familiarize yourself with the spreadsheet's functionality. This happens to be a really hard one when it hits in an exam hall, when you're struggling in inserting a row, a column, putting in a comma, trying to sum up a thing, which is actually messing up because you have not practiced it well. It is not an ordinary spreadsheet in exam hall. It is not Excel. This is a spreadsheet with contained and specific functionality. I really urge you people to go back to practice area, to the blank spaces that you have within the practice platform and really go through it. Practice past exams to time. This is an area where most of the students fail. Why? Because they are so overwhelmed with preparing their exams all along the way that they forget to practice the exam, and they try to just put it up when they go into the exam hall actually. So this is the exercise which would make you learn how to go by the time. So practice your exams to time. Oh, this is a really important one and crucial one. I've literally seen students punching specific single words onto their typewriter when they're in an exam hall. Increase your typing speed. Start working on it. And I am going to tell you this is not a hard task at all. There is a typing tutor that goes by the name of Typing Master. There's another typing tutor that goes by the name of Mavis Beacon Typing Tutor. And there are several others that are available online which you can practice. And I tell you, if you practice rightly, it only takes 1 week to really master your typing speed. Finally, we have come up with the 2 to 3 week study plan and the revision plan. Go for the bottom-up approach, guys. Let me honestly tell you first that what a bottom-up approach is. So do you remember the approach that I told you on my first slide, where it was quite methodical? You first need to consume knowledge, attempt quizzes, practice exams, and then finally practice exams on the practice platform. That is a top-down approach. That is a kind of approach which is a real confidence booster. But now that only 15 or 16 days are left to your exams, I wouldn't be really advising you to go for the hardcore top-down approach, but go for the bottom-up approach. And how does this work? The bottom-up approach says that you need to start with the practice questions. Pick up a practice question, attempt it to time, and see where did you get stuck. Pinpoint the weak areas, and now go back to your study text. Go back to your lectures. Go back to topic explainers and try to see where you went wrong. Now that is a learned correction, something that you have learned by making a mistake. You would remember it for probably the rest of your life. So that is the real task to attempt in these 2 weeks, which are there to your exams. I would also advise you to read the Mind of the Examiner report. This is a brilliant article on ACCA website. Go there, the examiner is actually telling you by marking 2 full-fledged questions in the constructed response section. One is for the interpretation part, and the other one is for the numerical part. What you need to learn out from over there, from this examiner's approach towards marking, is how to mark your own questions. This is in turn going to help you when you would be attempting questions on the practice platform, and you would then be able to mark your questions. This guidance is really going to come in handy at that point in time. Familiarize yourself with the practice platform. That is an amazing area to put yourself into a situation, assume yourself into an exam situation, and then tread accordingly. I would advise you to attempt at least 2 past exam questions. The first one is the March-June 2025 exam, and the other one is September-December 2024 exam. Attempt them to time, mark your own exams on the practice platform, and then go back to the study relevant examiner reports. These reports are really, really amazing piece of text. Examiner actually tells you where most of the students make mistakes. What are the common pitfalls? Learn out of them. You need to see where most of the people are going wrong and then correct your own direction. So moving forward, there is an amazing YouTube channel, which is ACCA Student Study Resources, that provides a lot of information around how to enable yourself in the area of financial reporting. For the last week of the exam, attempt the mock questions. I guess your mock is already out by 6th of November, and grab up the mock question on your practice platform. Once you're done, do it to time, then go and watch the debrief videos on the YouTube channel, which would already be there or would be there in a couple of days. Pinpoint your weak areas, revise your weak areas, go to the study hub, pocket notes, and see where you went wrong. If you happen to perform really well in your mock exam question, this will provide you with the necessary confidence that you need for your exam. And in case you're not being able to perform well, need not to worry about it. Improve yourself, because this is the time to improve yourself. examination is a test of it. Finally, take very good sleep. Don't burn yourself out. Sleep is very important towards the examination. Go in healthy and perform at your best. Thank you very much. Now I would just go back to Isabel. But, oh, wait a minute. Just in all this frenzy of not being able to start in time, I forgot to take the Q&A session. So let me go to the inbox. Okay, Laura has asked just a question for the end. When it comes to consolidation, on my last attempt, it was a mid-year acquisition. Some practice questions, they don't time a portion when consolidating, but on the example you showed, they did. What is the rule there? Well, Laura, if you are going to acquire a subsidiary down the year, for example, after 3 months of the start of the year, or for example, down the year after 6 months, and the question is pertaining to a consolidated statement of financial performance, income statement, profit and loss account, you have got to apportion the results. You cannot take up all the results and include in the group's consolidated financial statements, because the group can only show its own part in there. So if you have gone through some practice questions, I don't know where you have scooped them up from, because I would rather say that they're not authentic and you shouldn't be going by them. Go for the authentic sources, examiner reports, they are the validated ones. Which section of the exam should be completed first, just in case time might run out on you? Example, section A, B, or C. Well, I've already advised you guys during the slides that you shouldn't be section spotting. Go by the very flow of the exam. Go for section A, go for section B, and go for section C. This is the flow that has been advised by the examiner. This is how the exam is charted up, and this is how the difficulty level goes up. Go in for section A first, then section B, scoop in the easy marks, harvest the marks that are available to you, and then finally go for the section C, which is slightly difficult, and we all understand that. So I would really advise by going with the flow of what is already there on your plate. Okay, Afifa has said, for basic, we need to make a timeline to get the prorating right, which is very difficult in Scratchpad. How can we easily do basic earning per share objective type questions? Well, I would say you need to practice with your Scratchpad. If you're finding it difficult to move around with Scratchpad, then the problem is not with the Scratchpad. The problem is with the practice that you're having with it. You see, earning per share has a numerator and a denominator. And where is it coming from? The scenario itself. You need to highlight it from the scenario, scoop it in, put it onto your Scratchpad, and then use it from over there into your calculator to produce one. The point that I made and re-emphasized, and I would like to reiterate, is that if you will not be putting it in your Scratchpad, this would become very difficult to go back to the scenario, read it all over again just to pinpoint it. Putting it into the Scratchpad means that now you're neurologically wired to it. You know what the amount is, you can then use it in the calculator. Okay, here's another question. Sir, will there be standard marks for every question? Like with every question, this is the standard it has taken from. What I guess you're asking is if there are going to be any marks for mentioning the names of the standard. Well, be very sure about it. The names of standard are not marked. They'll really not be marked. You just need to have the concept, how things move around in that specific standard. For example, IAS 16 property, plant and equipment, you just need to be aware of the fact how they're costed, how they're recognized initially mired or subsequently mired, that would be enough to score marks in the examination hall. The name of the standards themselves bear no marks at all. Sometimes I get confused with 4 options. I know it is a conceptual weakness. How to overcome it? Well, the answer is in your own question, Amal. The knowledge part, as I've already emphasized in my earlier slide, is a very basic part. You first need to have grip over the knowledge part. And then the exam strategy actually sits on top of it. But I have a solution for it too. So there are certain techniques that if you're not sure about which option is the right option, I've talked about the elimination technique. I've also talked about the solving back technique and then the structured working technique. So these are 3 techniques that could come in handy, and you can use them to work through your question and reaching the right answer. And in case, by any means, if you really feel stuck at a certain question, you're not being able to crack it, then the guessing part kicks in. Guess it and move on. Because it doesn't really hurt to guess. There's no negative marking. Find Muhammad Yunus has said, someone referred that always read the requirement of the question first. Yes, I said that. I'm the culprit here. So the requirement part is really very important. And why I've said it to be so. Requirements give you a purpose. They tell you what to look out for in the scenario. Scenario has a lot of information in there. If you go and start reading the scenario right at the outset, you would really not have an idea about it as to what you are looking for. You read it through, having no idea about it, only to end up reading the requirement again and once again coming back to the scenario. So why to waste this precious time at your part? Read the requirement first. Wire your mind around the requirements, enable yourself, and then go back to the scenario. I just take the last question, Isabel, then I'll be coming back to you. This is my result. I previously got 49. Is there anything in particular I need to focus on as part of my reviewing process? Well, Cecilia, Myra, I already have talked about it in this presentation, and there were loads and loads of techniques around it, all the way up from the MCQ questions to the OTQs 1, CRs, and the numerical parts. So I guess if you go around this presentation once again, you'd be able to pick this one up as well. Thank you so much. Isabel, over to you.
Thank you so much. Just to say, because we did start a little bit late, we can stay a few minutes extra if there's anything else you want to just answer or anything you wanted to sum up before I wrap up. But yes, depending on if you've covered everything or. But if not, then I'm happy to wrap up. Thank you, everyone. Once again, I just wanted to say apologies that we've had technical issues in this webinar, but the presentation was streaming correctly. So when you get your email in the next 24 hours with the link to watch again on demand, you'll be able to watch everything uninterrupted. So don't worry if you did miss anything, it'll all be there. And Arslan's shared some really useful tips, so do recommend going back and watching that if you did miss anything. We'll bring today's session to a close. But before we wrap up completely, just a reminder that it's worth checking out all the resources in the resources section. They're going to be really handy as you prepare for your exam. A big thank you to everyone who's joined us. Thank you so much to our tutor Arslan for his support, and a big special shout out to the team working in the back end to try and answer your questions and help this session run. Wishing you all the very best in your exams. You've got this. Take care, everyone, and thanks for watching this session.